What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY and the overall market. I'm going to break down some big news that came out involving Israel and Iran, what's happening with big news involving Tesla and the overall economic data, what you should be watching for as time goes on. But just know that I am not a financial planner. Make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Webull link. If you deposit any amounts of money, you're guaranteed 12 free stocks. If you deposit $500 or more, you're guaranteed 20 and deposit $2,000 more and you're guaranteed 40. The offer ends in just 4 days. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the broader markets. Looking at Tesla, we did a great job at pushing ever since we got that absolutely incredible earnings report. Tesla ended up blowing many expectations away by beating on EPS. Although their revenue was a miss, they still did very, very well when it comes to their overall profitability, their projections, their guidance, and the list goes on. So the question now remains, what's going to happen from this point on? I think that Tesla's been doing a good job at pushing, but this resistance is coming up around this 270 area. You have to be very careful here because the last time we hit this 270 zone in the low 270s, we saw Tesla slow down a bit. So we'll see if Tesla slows down a bit or not this time around as well. So I'll be watching that very, very carefully. If we break above the 270s, though, we could be pushing even higher once again towards 278. And if we don't break 270, we could be dipping. So I'll be talking about what I think is going to happen in just a couple of minutes. But just know a couple of things. We have some big pieces of data coming out around the world. I want to talk about that first before I break down this chart. The first thing worth mentioning is the fact that there's a lot of tensions right now that are continuing between Israel and Iran. The whole situation is very, very tense. And the way it goes is this history between these countries goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. And I just wanted to say that led to Iran basically striking Israel, and as a result, Israel striking them back. So I'm just trying to be very unbiased when I say this. I'm not trying to pick any sides or get political. I just want to say that tensions are very, very high right now. And it's not the best of news for the markets. This could lead to some fear. Now, it was good that Israel did not target oil facilities, which would have affected crude a lot more, but they did end up hitting some very, very important test buildings. That did lead to some fears, I would say, amidst the way the market could continue to move, especially when looking at futures. I think that there is a risk of the market dipping a little bit more because of this news. However, as of right now, despite this negative news that's come out and the fact that Iran is still in a very, very dire place next to Israel, because now Iran might be coming back and they may try to retaliate again. So both of the countries, Israel and Iran, are in a dire situation. Innocent citizens are in dire situations, and it's very, very difficult to see. Despite that, the market still has some greed that's present. So even if the market does get a bit of a dip, there are still buyers that will try to defend, and we'll have to see how well they end up doing that. Now, momentum is still at greed, but it's beginning to slow down. And also, the put to call option ratio is at fear right now. Fear is continuing to build up, and that's what's making up the majority of sentiment for the options chain. So, what this means is, despite the fact that there are buyers defending, there's been a lot more put buying than before. That's why we're entering fear, and they're seeing a big shift. Also, when it comes to volatility, we're at neutral right now. We're going to be watching to see what the 50 daily moving average holds us. So I'll be watching this as time goes on. For more factors out there, I just want to mention that for tomorrow, it's going to be Monday, October 28th, 2024. At 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the Dallas Fed Manufacturing Index report. Then at 11:30 a.m., we have the 2-year note auction and the 3 and 6 month bill auctions after that. So watch some volatility at 10:30 and 11:30 a.m. Besides that, there's not really a whole lot else that's coming out, at least for tomorrow. But just know that data becomes very serious between Tuesday and Fridays. We have jobs numbers, we have inflationary data, manufacturing numbers, and the list goes on. But for now, just know that from Monday, the data is going to be a little bit more minor. Look for some volatility 1 and 2 hours after market open. And besides that, there's not a whole lot else. On top of this, when it comes to earnings, just know that for Monday after the market closes, we have Ford announcing their earnings. And then for Tuesday, we have SoFi, PayPal, AMD, and Alphabet. For Wednesday, we have Microsoft, Meta, Coinbase, and a few more. And for Thursday, we have Amazon, Apple, and Intel also announcing earnings. So Tuesday through Thursday is going to be very big for earnings. For tomorrow, it's just Ford and a few more, so nothing too crazy is coming out for tomorrow. So just keep that in mind. We have big tech earnings starting very soon. As far as Tesla goes, there's still a lot of hype about the $300 plus dollar price targets that Piper Sandler and the different analysts end up having. But there's also news about how the semi factory expansion is now getting a lot more plans. We're seeing a whole new full first full exterior corner that's been developed. And I think that this is great news because there's been a lot more hype about this. So in Nevada, the Giga Nevada, there's been a lot of observers looking at drones who are seeing that Tesla's once again increasing the perimeter with more steel columns. And this is big news because Tesla's working on expanding the production of the Tesla Semi. Now, the Semi business is very, very massive. We know how big this is, and this is going to be huge for Tesla. So I can't wait to see what else this leads to. But this is big news, at least for us as well. So more bullish news. Right now, we have new analyst ratings that just came out a couple of days ago. Like I said before, Piper Sandler gave us an overweight rating. Stifel has come out giving Tesla a buy rating. True Securities is kind of neutral, and then KGI Securities is saying Tesla is going to outperform. That's bullish news. And then volume is still at 161 million above average, so still quite bullish. So, what is my view of the charts? What do I think is going to pan out for Tesla and the others? I want to give you guys now my insights and 2 cents on that. So, the first thing worth mentioning is the fact that we've been looking at some new developments right over here as we're starting to see a lot more buyers continuing to step in. I think that right now, Tesla's continuing to push very nicely. We're going to be watching this resistance up here. We have this resistance to watch for right over here around this 270 area to 272. If we manage to break 270 to 272, we're looking for 278 as our next target. If we don't break past the 270 area, if we can't hold above that, there's a risk of Tesla declining back down to at least 265, if not 262. And I think my line got deleted. Actually, never mind. I think it's still there. So we have 265 and 262 as our targets. We got to hold at least 262. If not, there's a risk of Tesla dipping all the way down towards 255. So just keep that in mind. What do I think is going to happen now that we know the levels? The answer is I think that there's going to be a risk of Tesla dipping a little bit because of the whole news involving Israel and also because of what's happening with this resistance, because 270 is historically a tough resistance for Tesla. So there might be a dip coming towards 262. We could even dip a little bit more approaching that. We'll have to see if we get a bounce or not, but just know that there's going to be a risk of us dipping a little bit lower to 262 or so. And we'll see if Tesla gets a bounce off that or not. If we do bounce off this, we could continue to pump later, but look for an initial dip in the morning towards like the mid 260s, maybe a little bit below that, before we see some buyers try to defend. Remember, there's still some greed in the markets, so it's not like the buyers are gone. They're still present, so keep that in mind. As far as SPY goes, as you can see, we're making these very, very interesting looking tops again, 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 and again. We have resistance to watch for at 579.4, and our main support is currently at 578. If that fails us, we're looking for support down here around 576, followed by the 575 area. And if that breaks, we turn more bearish. Now, SPY has been developing this rising wedge-like structure. You guys can see it right over here. But we haven't officially broken out of it or lost our key support to turn officially bearish. So make sure you watch support right here around the 578 area. If that fails us, we're looking for a dip back down towards 576.5, followed by 575 over here. We have resistance around this 580 area to be watching for as well, not to mention above that. My gut is telling me we're going to pop a bit, then start dipping to 578. If that fails us, we're looking for basically a move back down closer to 575. And we'll see if buyers defend that or not, because there is still greed in the markets. And every time SPY is hitting 575 to 576, we got bought back up here, here, and here. So my opinion is this. Look for a bit of a dip tomorrow morning, especially after the Israel news. We could be dipping back down towards 578, then eventually down to 575. I think we might be dipping closer to the 575s. But don't forget that even if we do dip a little bit, we could still get bought back up later on, as there's still buyers present in the markets. So just keep that in mind, guys. That's how I see things. For ES, we're making these lower highs again, 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 and again. We're looking at 5830 is our support, 5820, then 5800. The resistance at 5850. My gut tells me that 5820 is going to be coming for a little bit of a dip to about 5800. So 5800 to 5820 should be coming. Then we should be looking for a rebound after that to see if we get back up to 5850. Look for a bit of a dip towards the 5820 area, and we'll see if buyers defend us after that. So look for a bit of a dip, then a nice rebound. So give this the time that it needs. For Nvda, we're actually dipping right here. We're looking at the support around this 140 area. If 140 fails us, we're looking for a dip back down towards 138. 138 is going to be our very, very important support. And if we look for the upside right over here, we're looking for basically 142.5. So look at 142 as our resistance, 142.5 if we hold above 140. If 140 fails us, we're looking for 138. One thing worth mentioning about Nvidia is the fact that we pumped here, kind of rejected, pumped here, rejected, pumped here, rejected. So we could be looking for 140, then 138 as our potential targets. And we'll see if we get a bounce or not off that area. So I think that 138 looks like a very, very, very realistic target for Nvidia before we see some buyers defend it for an attempt to bounce. So watch 140 to be tested. If that fails us, we're looking for 138, but then we could bounce after that. It is looking a little bit weaker here, considering the fact that we're just barely holding our 20 EMA. So give it the time it needs. For Bitcoin, we're trying to rebound. We could rebound for about 68,000, but then I see a risk of us dipping back down to 67,000 to once again get very, very close to our EMAs. So I'll be watching this very, very carefully just to see how this ends up developing. So give this the time that it needs. So look for a bit of a dip. I think that we've done a great job at holding up, but we could be looking for an attempt to get back to that key support. I'll be very, very patient with this nonetheless. So Bitcoin could be returning to about the 67,500 area, and we'll see how it ends up developing from there. For other factors out there, we have NQ. So one thing we're mentioning about NQ is the fact that we got that rejection. We're looking at 20,600 as our resistance, and then also 20,500. Our support is at 20,415. If that fails us, we're looking for a dip back down closer to about that support around 20,300. So I think what's going to happen is it's going to pop a bit and start dipping back down to these EMAs right here around the 20,400 area. If that fails us, we're looking for a dip all the way down towards 20,300. We'll see if we get a bounce or not, but that is what I'm essentially seeing. For the QQQ, we're also dipping right here. We're looking at this resistance around 496. Our support's at 493.6. If that fails us, we're looking for 492 as our main support, followed by the next level down here around 489. My gut tells me it's going to pop a bit, and there's a risk of it dipping if we lose 493.6, so watch for that as support. Might see a little bit of a dip towards 492 or maybe a little bit below that before some buyers try to defend this all over again, so watch to see if that ends up being the case. For Apple could be dipping, but we'll have to watch and see if the slow breaks or not. We had a high here, came down, made a lower high, came down, made a lower high, came down. So we're going to be looking for a bit of a dip down here towards the 229 area. And we'll see if we get a bounce off that or not. So look for some downside to the 229s, and we'll see what kind of amount of buyers end up coming from there. But look for a little bit of a dip on Apple for 229, and we'll see if buyers defend. So watch for that very carefully. For a few more, we also have basically Netflix. Netflix had a little bit of a high that was made here on Friday before dipping. Look for a test of 752. We'll see if we bounce off that or not. If we don't bounce off that, we're looking for a dip to about 750 or below. So I think 750 to 752 is coming for a little bit of a dip, and we'll see if we bounce off that or not. So look for some downside on a Netflix just to see what kind of reaction we get. For CELH, also known as Celsius, we look a little bit more bearish because when you look at the trend, we came up here, came down, made a lower high, came down, made a lower high, came down, over and over and over again. Now, if we break past 32, we could push higher, but if we fail to do that, there's going to be a dip back down towards 30.8. My gut tells me that 30.8 is coming. We'll see if we bounce or not, but I think there's a risk of this dipping a little bit lower. So watch to see if 30.8 holds. We could be dipping lower to this imbalance, and we'll see how things end up going. So you have to give this the time that it needs. For Palantir has 45 as our resistance. If 45 breaks, we're looking for a bigger push, even a higher, as this looks a little bit more bullish. However, I think that 45 is going to be a tough resistance since we have a bearish divergence developing here. So I might see a little bit of a dip back down to about the 43.5 to 44 area before this may attempt to bounce again. So look for a small dip on Palantir before we continue moving forward. For Supermicro, we have 48 as resistance and then 49.8. If we lose 46.6, we're looking for a dip back down to 45. My gut tells me that 45 is coming before this attempts to rebound, so watch and see if that ends up being the case. But that's the most likely case that I am presuming. For Rivian, we are once again forming a double top leg structure. We're looking at the support at 10.34. We'll see if we bounce off that or not, but look for a little bit of a dip to about 10.2 before we continue. So there's going to be a little bit of downside coming before it attempts to rebound, so give this the time that it needs. For SoFi, we're on a bit of a dip here. We have like a slight bearish divergence. We could be dipping close to about 10.6. So we'll be watching to see if 10.6 comes before we attempt to rebound. So I think that SoFi might rebound a bit, trying to hold 11. That might dip to about 10.6 and try to bounce again off that. So it could be a small dip, then a bounce back to reclaim 11. So keep that in mind. For the IWM, we have our main support at 218, our 200 EMA. If that does not hold us, we're going to be dipping back down to at least 216. And we'll see if we bounce off that or not. If it does hold, we're looking for 220. My gut tells me that 216 is coming. We'll see if we bounce or not. So be very, very patient as far as the IWM ends up going. So I think we could be dipping to 216. We'll give this the time that it needs. Then we'll give this a little bit more patience as time goes on. Let's look for a bit of a dip. For AMD, we're kind of rejecting here. We have our 50 EMA as our resistance, our support at 155, not to mention 153. I think that 155 to 153 could be coming. We'll see if we get a bounce or not. So look for a little bit more downside on AMD and give this the time it needs. So watch 155 and 153 as our supports. Look for a small dip on AMD and see if buyers defend there or not. But do anticipate a little bit of a dip upon open as the most likely case. For ARM, we are rejecting. We need to be looking at 142.74 as support. If that fails us, we're looking for a dip back down towards 141. So be very mindful of that. There is going to be a risk of that potentially coming. So be very patient, and we'll see how things end up going. For other factors out there, I just want to mention that we also have, let me just double check this, Coin. Coin is starting to slow down just a bit. We have this resistance to watch for around 206 and support at 199.5. My gut tells me this is resembling kind of like a head and shoulders like structure, and we're looking a little bit weaker, so I do anticipate some downside towards 199. So look for 199.5 as the most likely case to be tested. We'll see if we bounce or not, but that's what I am anticipating. For Amazon, we're dipping right over here as well. We're making lower highs. We kind of like popped here and dropped, popped and dropped, popped and dropped. So we're looking at 187.3 as our support. If that fails us, we have this gap to fill all the way down towards 186.23. So I think that 186.23 could be coming. Look for a little bit of a dip if we end up losing 187.3. So look for some downside and we'll see what the reaction happens to be. For Meta, we had a high here, came down, made a lower high, came down, made a lower high, came down over and over and over again. So we could be dipping back down towards 580, 568. I think there's a risk of us dipping back down to 568 or something, maybe a little bit below that, 568 to 565. And we'll see if Meta gets bought back up or not. Don't forget to watch resistance, resistance at 576. My gut tells me that 568 to 565 is coming before we see some buyers step in. For Microsoft, we have a bearish divergence double top leg structure. Watch this resistance around 428. If we start dipping, we're looking for a dip back down towards 425. I think 425 is likely coming for a little bit of a dip, and we'll see if we bounce. So look for a dip on Microsoft to see what kind of reaction we get. For Google, we push very nicely towards 167. We'll see if this breaks or not. If it does break, we're looking for 168. This looks a little bit more bullish as we're grabbing this liquidity right over here to try to push up higher. So look for 168 as our next potential target, and we'll see how things end up going. For DJT, DJT is going to be approaching the 40 area. This is our resistance. I think there's a good chance we try to push higher. If we end up losing 37.5, it could be dipping back down towards 35. But this is favoring upside for 40. For the VIX, we're trying to push right here. It looks a little bit more bullish as we're getting a breakout potential. Might be looking for this imbalance filled closer to 21. And this could signify that the market may see some downside. So just be very patient and mindful of that. The 10-year is pricing in something very important in the bonds market. I don't really want to get political when I say that, but I just want to say that that's part of why the market's reacting this way. So be very patient with this. This could lead to some downside. The dollar is also breaking out right here. So if we continue to hold above our 20 EMA, this could push higher, signifying the market may have some downside as well. The dollar is not perfect. It has not been causing the market to dip overall. It's more like this is just a correlation we tend to make. And right now, there's a little bit of a slowdown. So what is my view of the market? It's very simple. The market might see some downside, which might lead to Tesla slowing down. Look for 270s resistance. We might dip a little bit on Tesla to the lower 260s before we see some attempt to bounce. Just keep that in mind, guys. I just want to say I really appreciate you guys so much for listening. Be prepared for that 270 resistance. We'll see if it breaks or not. We may get an initial slowdown on Tesla, especially if the whole market dips after the whole Israel news. But then we'll be watching to see if we get a bounce after that because there's still buyers present in the markets. All right. So with that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. Please enjoy the rest of your guys' weekend. I'll be back for another update. It's a tomorrow, which is going to be before the market opens. So until then, thank you all so much for listening. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Watch some football. Have some fun. And I'll see you guys very, very soon on the next one. Thank you for listening. Tesla to the moon because the long term is very, very bright. Even if we do get a small little slowdown, I'm still very, very bullish and excited for what Tesla's future has to hold. And I still see a lot of opportunity in the stock, even looking at the current valuations. All right. Thanks again and peace out.